Appease Gratitude by R. Metza. Hypnosis session today at 3 with Dr. McCullough. It seemed rather unimportant now. The box note and the calendar set in stone on the computer screen. Her sandwich was leaking down her pinky to the muscled palm. Honey mustard on vegetables. No more meat. She had lost complete interest in being a carnivore. Here in the fall, when the air is cooler, it was expected that she crave her childhood traditions: roasted turkey and smothered meatloaf, casseroles held by a grandmother's brightly colored oven mitt. She pulled at the sprout peeking out of the bread and twisted it between her thumb and forefinger. Wind blew the lacy half curtain in the kitchen window. The green piece of life shook in the wind, falling into the marred wooden table. She watched it dance across the top, leaving a string of green fluorescent light trailing behind it for a moment before fading as it went dormant. The wind had died away. Who had she become? For certain the hypnotherapy sessions had rewired her brain. That was the advertisement in June. Rewire your brain fast, it said in the advertisement. Big blue flashing letters on the web page underneath the sandals that she had pined for at the time. Tired of the incessant pain that crept her mind and seeped into her body, she grabbed at the opportunity, clenched the idea in her old, desperate, teeth-grinding fashion. Black mascara, murky river tears. It all had to stop. It had to end, she decided. No longer would she rape the sad box. Migraines ceased. Thoughts of past betrayal gnawing at her disappeared. Aching joints eased, and the fear of trusting others vanished as though a fated nightmare. It was some psychological suicide, ending her old self without mercy. When the plump caterpillar goes into the cocoon, it literally is digested by the new winged thing to come out. Total destruction of the dense belly dragger with too many crawling thoughts to count. Her mind, her thoughts, were now hers and hers alone. She knew this because they didn't sabotage her and they didn't judge anyone or anything. And from that unlimited state came a mindset that felt as though granite in nature, a conviction in what she truly was. And that's when the unconquerable archetype spoke from within. It was in her second hypnosis session, quite quick for such an unforeseen breakthrough, a fresh dream that arose from psychological death. Even Dr. McCullough was quite stunned at the figure that emerged. Working for years as a hypnotherapist with over 300 patients to count, he had not seen a transformation such as hers. Not Frankenstein in style, mind you. There were no half-used parts or rotten bits of psyche pasted together from scattered memories of old. Observation that the memories had occurred, yes, but obsolete, and that they had no power to determine her current actions. His small office, wooden paneled and decorated with stacks of books and paperweights shaped like phoenixes and dogs. No children, just dogs and research. While most people had photos of the wife and kids, he had canine smiles on every shelf. "What are your current capabilities?" asked the doctor. It was 3:33. The clock hands quite ornate posed to spin the circle it was confined to. She was able to hear his next question that was coming after this one, so her answer was, "I know your next question is, do you feel any different physically when you attain these new insights? So I will say that first of all, a current capability is that I can hear others' future thoughts, as though a person's footsteps coming around the bend of a hallway. You cannot see the person physically, but you hear their tread, and it is a fact that they are there, even though not fully apparent yet in the moment." The doctor took off his glasses and rubbed his greasy forehead, pulling his hand down his face. He wasn't astonished, baffled, or mystified. It was more like a connection of his past research was coming to conclusion within this physical reality. He didn't ever consider that he would have a patient capable of such pragmatic metaphysical actions. But looking over at Meeka, he knew that she was sitting here in his office, a person exhibiting logical mysticism without any coercion or effort. She was not acting as shaman with rituals and trances. In fact, he had not put her in a trance for weeks. The prompting effects of hypnosis were not even needed. The depth of her multifaceted consciousness was displayed before him at all times. Meeka waited while he tapped notes into his computer, listened to his thoughts stringing and gathering like water bugs, communing on the surface of a pond. Streams of reflective after effects bouncing into one another, leaving residual groups of possible new thoughts forming. But most of the notions broke off and scattered like fragmented puzzle pieces. Only the ideas that stayed together grew into more words and sentences. His mind stayed focused on the result he was looking for by investigating her perceptions on reality and trying to categorize her, intent on finding the labels to produce a result that would satisfy others on what exactly she was in comparison to the status quo of regular consciousness. She was aware of what he thought, that she was his obligation, his patient, and so he organized his mind out into the laptop about her. The process seemed slow and unnecessary to her, and while she was in this waiting period, she flew her consciousness up above his head and watched the scene from a new perspective. "I'm almost done," he said, pecking furiously at the silver rectangled screen. "Take your time," she whispered, as she drifted across the ceiling. There was a dead bee in the windowsill, turning to dust near a red file that sat half open. Her name was in Sharpie on the tab. She laid her mind on the stack and picked up all his notes from within. It was rather natural to exit her body and gather information from wherever she wanted at this point. The world pretended to hide things, thoughts, files, folders, emotions, but she was keen to it all, a complete knowing. The doctor was writing out possible energy field connections that allowed telepathic capabilities. She zipped back down into her body when he was about to finish. Micah drew a deep breath. "Yes, I believe it is an energy field connection, if you would like to call it that. It's not that I'm doing anything special. It's that it is obvious that nothing is hidden like people seem to think. It's that people are simply blind and fearful. The truth is not scary, but the blindness opens the mind to rogue thoughts, and the rogue thoughts produce rogue reality. And it is therefore self-fulfilling, a perpetual spin that validates fear to come. I do remember the times before. I do understand what the consciousness anticipates, seeking safety at all costs. Yet now it is quite simple, quite clear, and with this clarity I realize the imposter syndrome before us all." "Imposter syndrome?" he questioned. These explanations were beginning to feel unsatisfying to her. Recognizing the questions would never cease, she stood and smoothed her long golden hair. The bits of skin around her eyes felt translucent, as though her eyesight was expanding, and she could see her peripheral vision without moving her eyes, seeing the edge of her back and the door behind her, as though she was looking over her shoulder, while still physically facing forward. "Oh, wait," stood the doctor, turned investigative reporter, clicking the laptop shut to give the sense that he was fully focused on her and did not want her to leave. Looking at his phone, he saw that it had been only a 30-minute session. "We have only just begun," he scrambled, stepping around the U-shaped desk, holding out his hand near her in some kind of guidance to retain her. But she had made her decision and left with a simple "thank you." Shutting the car door, she felt the silence of the small space within. Placing the keys in the ignition, she noticed a bumbling bee on the dash, wings flitting, tail shaking, trying to lift itself from the cracked dash. Unsuccessful in flight, the bee gave a final buzz, spun in a circle, and became lifeless. Meeka rolled down the car window, gently picked up the bee, kept it between her hands, and blew into the hole between her thumbs. The bee stirred to life and flew out the window. Settled in her palm was a dollop of honey, a bee's gratitude.